Hello, hello. It's me again. I don't think this video needs a trigger warning, but trigger warning for all the things. I will not use abbreviations, and I swear a fuck ton. So, deal. Um, I didn't think I'd be doing an update on what has happened since I started this channel, as it's really only been a week. I think I uploaded my first video Wednesday last week, and it is now Thursday. It's wash day. I have not washed yet. But this week has been just an insane week in all the best ways, for the most part, other than the anniversary of my mom's passing being Monday. But it's been a phenomenal week in a very positive way. There is no way for me to keep this short. I will try my best to not apologize for my rambling because I'm told that adds more time to the video. I did actually write down notes, so I will try to stay more on topic and address the few points that I would like to address. And I still have not processed everything from this week because it's just happened and I'm in such a state of shock that I'll need time to really fully process everything that happened. But I just have to talk about it because I am literally just so supremely content. And I'm a level of happy I honestly thought was not achievable, considering this last year plus, which I will try not to go into that part. So yeah, so since starting my channel and uploading pretty much every day, and then Saturday I didn't because something big happened. My dad called me. My dad doesn't call often. In fact, I typically call him. He did call after I lost Jordan and talked to me. We talked for a while, but dad has a lot of children. I explained that in my origin story. So he mixes us up. I get it, and it is what it is. Um, we have had a very distant relationship for many years. We made our amends of sorts years ago, and I decided that a general apology for everything that's ever happened was insufficient, but it was enough. It was better than so many others have got from our parents. So I was content with that, and I decided those 15 years ago that I was just going to move forward from it. I don't believe in forgive and forget. Forgiveness is for the victim, not for the victimizer. And and forgetting is just how we repeat history. So I hate that word. To me, that phrase, to me, that is what abusers and perpetrators want you to do so they can get off scot-free. And I do not believe in forgiveness to absolve anything that happened. But I do believe in forgiving yourself for being hurt and allowing yourself to move forward. That form of forgiveness I absolutely believe in, and that's what I made the decision to do, because it was more important for me to have a very loose, very distant relationship with my dad than to, don't ask the question if you don't want the answer. If I had probed and really asked for his accountability in his part in it, I was very worried that I would get gaslit and I would be told that I was just a bitter, angsty young person who just had it out for my parents and the adults of the cult. And it has happened. I can't even express how many of us have had this line fed to us that we are lying, that we're exaggerating, that we're doing so many, that we are just telling stories and lying on them. And I just didn't want to risk that, so I did not push for more. I accepted the little apology and I just was like, this is better than most people get, and I will be okay with this. So yeah, dad called me and he had one thing that he had a problem with. And it was, he clarified that, and I already corrected this, that it was not the Colosseum they could see from their window in Rome. It was the Pantheon. I wasn't alive then, so my memory just was off on that. And I'm like, are you sure that's the only thing you want to correct or talk about? And he said it was really hard for him to hear, but he really wanted to hear my perspective of how my experience was and where his actions or inactions were problematic and how I interpreted them. And he encouraged me to continue talking. And so am still in complete and utter shock. I I feel validated, and I didn't realize I needed that. I didn't realize, I mean, he's an adult. He's one of the people that caused some of these problems. And to hear, so I'm like, he doesn't matter, but I'm like, I didn't realize just how much he does matter and how healing it was to hear those words and to feel that compassion from him and hear him admit, like, yeah, I fucked up really bad. And I mean, I feel like I'm pretty fair where I acknowledge where he made good decisions, but I'm also going to call people out where they made bad decisions. I will also be holding myself accountable, and I have so much shit to say about myself too. It is coming. But this was so healing to hear. I was just literally in tears. I can't even explain. So that was dad. And I spent the whole weekend talking to several of my sisters, filling them in on what dad said, and also talking to them about some things I may say about each of them that might not be the nicest things. We're sisters, we've had our ups and downs, and we have had lots of good times, but also times where we don't have the best times in ways that we've hurt each other. I will absolutely own things that I've done. There's probably some areas where I should own up to things, but I don't feel I should, I'm sure, because of course I'm a little biased towards myself. But it also led me into a conversation with one of my sisters that I have been having a problem with recently. And I won't go into too much detail about it, but we ended up talking again, prompted by my conversation with dad, and I filled her in with that. And I wasn't sure that I was going to share with her my issues with her, because for me, I prefer to just own my own feelings and not put them on other people. I'd rather deal with it myself and just be a tough little cookie and just do it myself instead of letting other people know how their actions might hurt me. I'd rather just deal with the hurt than hurt them by informing them. But in this speak the truth, zero filter applied mode that I'm in, I was very honest with her, and I expressed a problem that I thought I had discussed with her before, but I didn't make it especially clear that just how much a problem I found it and how hurtful I felt it was. And while I fully accept my accountability for my reaction to it and my interpretation of things, it still doesn't change the fact that it makes me hurt. And she was very oblivious. I don't think she meant to harm me. I absolutely believe that. And as uncomfortable as the conversation was, I think we had a very big healing moment. And we made a social contract on how we were going to move forward from this and how we were going to hold ourselves accountable in this situation. And I feel like I got my sister back. And I was really worried that she might be really, really hurt and not want to talk to me for a bit, which is why I didn't address it, because I was worried about the fallout and about getting a worse reaction. And instead, because she does love me and she does care about me, we instead had a very uncomfortable but very honest, and I also believe a very healing conversation. And once again, I feel very rebonded to my sister, as I do with my dad. I feel like I'm no longer an orphan. I've felt like an orphan for so many years. Since my mom died, and that was 25 years ago, I felt like I was so alone and I didn't have a parent anymore. My mom died and my dad was gone. And now I feel like I have my dad back. I feel like I have my sister back. With her, it wasn't quite as big of a gap, it was more a recent thing. People are uncomfortable in grief, and people don't know how to respond correctly. And so I feel like we talked through that, and it was really, really just so healing. And with how much I've talked to people over this weekend, 6 hours with one sister, about 9 or 10 hours with another over the course of a couple conversations, 3 hours with another. I spent an hour on the phone with my dad, and then I made a new friend. And so this new friend is so slightly more complex. I don't believe in fate, but the way we met is just making me believe maybe there is fate. I don't know. For an atheist, I need to think that one over quite a bit. But um, we have private safe spaces for us ex-culty people where we discuss our traumas, and it is a very raw place, and we share very intimate things about our past with other people who can understand and who we don't have to explain it to. We just understand because we know what we're talking about. We know the environment we were in, and so we don't have to justify it. We all just understand. And that's what's so important about having safe spaces for minorities. That now I'm going to go off on tangents about safe spaces. I will try not to, but it is really important that we have this place where we are free to talk and free to share our very personal traumas without feeling the need to justify ourselves or where we're coming from. Some girl had made a post about how she's going to speak her truth about her past trauma. I was the first one to interact with her post. I left a heart, and I was the first one to comment saying, "Girl, I hear you. Speak your truth. Absolutely, I support you." And I'm not sure what in my interaction with her made her, I think she confused me with someone else, because her response to me was like, "Why are you silencing this person?" And she tagged him, and why won't you let him speak his truth? And I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. Why would you think I'm trying to silence anyone? I just literally said, please share your story. I encourage you, because that's what I'm doing. So, like, speak out. The more of us who speak out, and the better, well-rounded story, our story will form, instead of one of us representing all of us. It's such a burden. If so many of us would speak out, it would give so many different perspectives, and a fuller picture would be formed, instead of just one or two perspectives having to represent all of us. And so I was like, who are you and who are you talking to? But because I was so baffled by her response, I decided to look up this person, and I saw their post. And he is an outsider, and I understand why people were uncomfortable with him being in our space. But he was connected to the cult through a third party, and he experienced trauma because of that. And mostly, he still wasn't convinced that this person he was connected with actually was in the cult. He just had a lot of really weird coincidences, and so many people have helped him over the years put some of these pieces together. But he hadn't yet met anybody within the cult or a former member that could conclusively say, yes, I knew this person, I knew their family, and they lived in a commune with us and were absolutely a member of this cult. He hadn't met that person. Me being baffled by this woman led me to find his post, and I saw sincerity in what he was trying to figure out. He had been sort of encouraged to exit our group, and I don't disagree with that. I don't think I understand why people were uncomfortable with him there, because I frankly was as well. As nice as he is an outsider. We've actually discussed maybe creating a page that is just for us to share what we're willing to share with outsiders, because there could be other third parties that have been affected by the fallout of this cult. But we need a safe place for the actual survivors of the cult directly. But maybe we could create a safe place for others, like third parties who were never members, but who were still affected by the cult, as this person is. And so I was motivated to reach out to him. There was something in his story that sounded familiar, and it was a name. And I wasn't really sure why it was familiar. I've lived with so many hundreds of people over the years in these communes, so names and faces come and go. So I messaged him and explained that I would be willing to hear his story, and it's possible that I could help validate his story. I told him I am skeptical, and trusting is something I have very I do not have a lot of ability to trust. I have a lot of trust issues, and they have been definitely worsened since losing Jordan. I trusted him completely, and I lost him. And so years of trust issues were not rewarded when I finally did trust someone fully, because I lost that person. So I'm even more untrustworthy now than ever. But I would be willing to hear his story, and it's possible I might be able to help him find that last missing piece to his puzzle that would confirm for him once and for all. I didn't know if I could. I honestly thought there was a very vague chance that I might know who he was talking about. But we ended up talking, and this person he was talking about, while I don't know her in particular very well, I believe I lived with her for a short period of time. She was much younger than me, and so we would not have been close. And for reasons I will go into at a later date. But her older brother was my age, and oh boy, I was 12 and he was 13, and I crushed so hard on that boy. And we were together for, I don't know, a few weeks, because that's how it is when you're 12 and 13. But he was my first crush, my first huge crush, and I've always wanted to find him again, but he's not active in any of these groups. And but I've had this, like, the fantasy of your first love, your first crush. So I have had this, and it just so happened that he's the older brother of the woman that he is connected to. And so it's just this weird coincidence. And both of us were a little like, are we sure we're talking about the same people? Because a lot of people could have this name. Are we sure? And I was, after talking to him the first time, I was like 98% sure that he was legit and that he actually knew someone from the cult. And so I found the only picture I have of her older brother, because I couldn't find a picture of her. But the older brother, I would recognize him as an adult, I believed. And I was like, it's a horrible picture. But I sent it, and I'm like, do you think maybe you see him in this picture? And it wasn't just him in the picture. There was, if I had to guess, I'd have to count. But there's like about 15 of us in the picture. But I am in the picture as well as this boy. And he picked him out. He's like, I'm really not sure, but I think this one person could be him. And I'm like, you picked him. You picked him out. And then he sent me a few pictures of the woman he was talking about and the brother. And the brother, I was like, that's definitely him. I would recognize him anywhere. Yeah, it's him. And then he sent a couple more pictures of the sister. And there was a couple of the pictures, I'm like, wait, she looks familiar here. And they were older pictures for him, but they were about 10 years after I knew them. So closer to the time I knew them, but still quite a few years had passed. So it's a little hard to recognize. And there's a lot of things from my past and faces. I have blocked out so many faces and names, like so many. But it's them. And I was like 99.99% certain at this point. He was still a little uncertain. He was concerned that maybe I was trying so much to help him find closure that maybe I was too eager to help. And I was concerned that I might be doing the same thing. So I asked him a question. I asked him one word. And I will not explain why I asked this word or what the correct answer is, because I literally plan on doing an entire video with a trigger warning for cult people about the word toilet paper. Now, if you've never been in the cult, you're thinking that's such a stupid question to ask, because I'm sure the first thing most people will think about will be 2020, and the lack of toilet paper will probably be the first thing. But the first thing that came to mind for him in regards to her and her family was very different. And I will go into those details at a later date of why toilet paper is a trigger. And I have trauma related to toilet paper. And this is why I chose this word. It's such a random thing. You can't Google it. You can't research it. You're not going to find a news article about the cult about this. You're just not. And so yeah, he wasn't sure if what he said was correct. He just knew this is what his experience in regards to her and her family was with toilet paper. And I'm like, dude, you answered correct. Like, that rings true to me, because that is totally, yeah, I relate to all that. And he was mostly convinced then, and he was like really excited. And then he mentioned a mango tree on the property, an amazing mango tree. You can Google this property and you can find them on Google Maps. But anyone who's ever lived in this house as a child knows about this mango tree. We had 14 different species of mangoes. We had a ton of mango trees. So at first he was like, oh, yeah, you had mango trees. It was Brazil. Of course you had mango trees. But I'm like, no, no, no. No one cares about the other mango trees. There was a couple that were good for climbing, but there was one. There was the mango tree. And any young person who ever lived in this home in Brasilia, you know exactly what mango tree I'm talking about. And that mango tree, sadly, I believe was cut down when they turned this property into like 6 different properties. That's how big, and they're nice, big properties, like still luxurious, large houses. But our property was so enormous. I believe it was like a whole city block, maybe even more. Like, it was a large, large property. It was like, had some acreage. I have no idea the size of it, but it was huge. And we all know about that one motherfucking mango tree because it was our best climbing tree. The younger kids, as around the time when I was leaving, made a tree house in it, and all of that. It was the best climbing tree I have ever climbed in my entire life. Anyone who ever lived in that house as a child, adults aren't quite so fun and don't go climb trees like we did. But that was the best climbing tree ever in the existence of mankind, is that mango tree. And him mentioning the mango tree, I was like, dude, she lived in that house. That's the only way you would know. You can't research shit like that. That's such a random fact about that fucking mango tree. So random. And literally, we were both in tears at it. It felt so amazing to help someone finally put that last piece together, and finally everything he had suspected and was trying to piece together finally all made sense. And I'm so glad I got to be a part of that. And now I firmly believe that I have made a new friend for life. I can help him in filling in all the details, not specific to this person's experience, but the kind of things that you can't Google, the kind of things that, are outside of the facts and figures. I can fill in some of these details that were odd, that he was like, is this a thing? Is this a cult thing? He's not sure. And I'm like, oh my God, that so is. And like little random odd things that he's not sure if they're important or not. And I can be the one to say, no, that's not a thing, or yes, that's definitely a thing. So it feels really good to be able to help this person. And it all started because someone got me confused with someone else, which is just wild. And he was thanking me very profusely about taking my time and helping him with this, because I didn't need to. And he's right, I didn't. But I had just felt so healed and validated by my dad that I was like, I'll pay it forward. I'll help this person out. And trying to understand your trauma and trying to dig into your past is literally what I'm doing right now, so I can understand going through that journey. And I'm the perfect one to help with this because I'm actively talking about my past right now. So I'm in a place where I'm very comfortable talking about it, and talking about it is not going to re traumatize me so long as I don't have to read old literature and look into too deeply in cult publications. I can talk about the experience and it's not hurtful or harmful for me. I currently have a harder time talking about Jordan right now because it is actively very difficult for me to talk about and makes me tear up and get way too sappy of a mess. And so it's just such a relief to be able to talk so honestly. And he feels a need for me as well. I, since losing Jordan, I will try not to cry. Since losing Jordan, I have felt his absence in every little detail in my life. From little tiny, tiny things like the way he would lose our chapstick all the time because he'd forget it in his pants pocket and run it through the wash and it would melt, or I just could never find my chapstick. It's a big thing. To just little tiny, just really tiny things. But one of the biggest voids that I feel, aside from, our actual physical interactions and connections, but having really deep, serious conversations about all sorts of things, about life, and I've really missed having that connection with a man. I don't know why it's so important to have it with a man, but Jordan was a man and I miss that. And I absolutely have no interest in dating, in ever being finding love again. I really don't. I have a wall saying I'm never doing that again because he stole my heart and I have no heart to give to anybody. So I have so many good supporters in my corner, but they are primarily women. The closest people I am with in regards to my grief are women because I have an extraordinary abundance of sisters and I have a large, wonderful group of widow support, and the majority are also women, which is so beneficial to me. I can't even explain, but I still strongly feel the void of having a deep connection with a man. And anytime I've tried to have conversation or interact with a man, it just always seems to be motivated on their end with by the possibility that maybe it will lead to some form of intimate relationship, and I cannot fathom that in my current frame of mind. I that is not anywhere in my conceivable future. I'm trying to stay open to it because Jordan and I had discussed in the past, if either of us were to be gone, what would we wish for our surviving partner? And we both expressed that we would absolutely want each other to try to find love. But I am not there yet. I'm trying to be there for his benefit because it's what he would want for me, but I'm not there and I don't see that anywhere in on the horizon. Maybe the world will turn in just such a way that I will see it on my horizon someday. Never say never, but I don't see it in anywhere in my future at this time in my life. However, I would like to have a really, really close guy friend. And I can benefit him in this way of helping him understand and dismantle this trauma that he experienced through his third party connection to the cult. So I am of benefit to him in a completely non intimate, non relationship type way, which is awesome. So he doesn't need that or want that from me. We can just be friends. We can just help each other in this way. I get to have friendship with a man, and we have talked about some very personal, intimate things in our conversation. And I love that because small talk I find so tedious and so petty that it just agitates me so much. So getting to know someone new is, I find just so, I hate to say worthless, but in my mind, I just have such a problem. I can do it in my professional life, but not in my personal life. I have no energy for that. I need to have deep conversation, which is why I'm so connected with my widow group, because that's what we do. We do talk about fun and casual things too, but we go deep. And it's not just how's the weather, you know, and because I find it's so tedious to have small talk. And so we haven't even had like any sort of small talk, which is awesome. We've just had some very, very deep conversation. And I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. I need someone I can have this conversation with. And you're not creeping me out by trying to hit on me or throwing unwanted compliments out there. I'm like, this is perfect. So yeah, so this is amazing. I feel like I'm filling a need for him and he's filling a need for me, and it is wonderful. And God, that feels like I'm putting so much pressure. You must be my friend, damn it. But I am a little needy right now. I feel like that's okay. So this week was also a little difficult, having the 25-year mark since losing my mom. But since all my grief process with Jordan, I was able to look at her loss in a much more positive way, which sounds really strange because since losing Jordan, I've been quite the pessimist. But I was able to look at all the wonderful memories I have of her and the awesome ways that she's influenced my life, which led me to also be a bit introspective about the positive things that, from my experience with Jordan, because I have been struggling so hard with all the negative fallout of losing him that it's been really hard to focus on the positive aspects of our relationship and all the amazing ways that he's influenced my life. So I was able to write about that too. And it's not a positive thing that he's gone, but it's a positive thing that he was a part of my life and that he loved me so much, no matter how broken I am. And a really small side note, I also this week met my son's girlfriend's mom, and I really wasn't sure that it was a good idea for me to meet her for the first time. My son and his girlfriend have been dating for about 2 years, and she's been living here with us for most of that time. And we have had our ups and downs, which I will address at another time. But we're doing really good now. And she asked if I would do her mom's hair. And I was like, are you sure you want me to meet her? Because I'm on this really, I've never had much of a filter. Anyone who knows me knows this. But lately I have had no filter at all. And I'm like, this might be a terrible time for me to meet her because I don't even know what I will say because I am very much on this trip of honesty is the best policy, even if it's an uncomfortable truth. But it went really well, and I will discuss it at a further date because I said some things and was very, very blunt and honest with her that honestly it shouldn't have gone as well as it did. But I think she's lovely and I'm excited to interact with her in the future. So that was a positive as well. And so I guess my big takeaway from this week is that I wrote a note for myself. Problems resolved through honesty. I No one can ever say that I am someone who holds back much. I have constantly been told that I'm very blunt, and sometimes being very blunt can be hurtful. And I am not known for being a deceitful person. I don't believe. I have a really hard time lying. The best I can do is earlier years, if I didn't want to explain the whole cult, I would give a half truth. My dad did freelance artwork, and that's why we traveled, which wasn't entirely a lie. it also wasn't entirely truthful, but it was a version of the truth. And that's usually what I was most comfortable with. People would often assume I was military, and I could have just gone with, yeah, sure, let's say that. But that would be a lie. And so I could never say that. And so, yeah, I can't lie. Or, I mean, I guess I could, but I just don't. But I do withhold the full truth at times, mostly to spare other people's feelings or to spare myself from having to be too exposed or vulnerable. Because I really try not to be vulnerable. I really try to be a really tough cookie and display that I'm strong, raw, I can do everything. I can do it all myself and I don't need anybody. I have had this conversation with other people many times that I hate asking for help. I hate asking. I don't like needing help. I'm just too proud, honestly. And so being vulnerable like this and saying this is a problem and this is something that I really need to be fixed, and being very blunt with my sister, with my dad, it brought so much healing to me. And I am in awe that this amount of unfiltered honesty has been so tremendously healing for me this week. And it all just started with me doing a very loose overview. I haven't even gone into big details about things. I haven't even gone quite so deep down my rabbit hole of emotions and thoughts and any of that yet. But just being very frank and very blunt and very honest in the kindest way I can. I mean, I'm not just like, you did this to me, fuck you, but just being as honest as I can while still trying to understand their perspective, but still being very upfront. And I'm repeating myself, I know, but I'm still so overwhelmed that being very blunt and very forthcoming about how things made me feel and actually letting people know this is what you do or this is what you did and this is how it affected me and this is how it made me feel. And while I am responsible for how I respond and react to these things, I this is what you're doing that's causing this reaction in me. And it's my fault that I feel this way, but you're also doing this thing. And by saying this and being very forthcoming and prioritizing my healing while still being as kind about it as I can, is that's been healing. Being upfront about it has been so tremendously healing. And on that note, I think I will sign off. I just had to, one other thing, because of course there's always one other thing. I have a bunch of artwork that I have done since losing Jordan, and I have picture frames coming today for my artwork, and I will be putting them on the wall because another thing Dad mentioned is the big void behind me, which I recognize. Although he didn't notice, it's not entirely just a white wall. I mean, there is a hook there. Um, and there's also, luckily, the lighting doesn't really make it visible. But if you were able to like zoom in or fix the quality of the video, you would notice that Jorge, my spider friend that lives in this corner, he has left a few cobwebs. He's not living in any of them yet or currently, because I did like sort of wipe at them, but there are some cobwebs. I name my spider friends in the basement. They're just the little ones that catch the flies and mosquitoes and such. Maybe because Jorge is busy rebuilding his new home in this corner is why the flies have been nuts, because Jorge should be handling that. For some reason, all my spiders have Latin names down in the basement. I have Rodrigo and Eduardo and Rogerio, and there's different corners. I understand that there's several generations, so this is like Jorge the 2000th at this point. So, anyways, that's me and my basement spiders that I name. But yes, so he has left some of his previous residences on my wall. That's a nice way of saying I have some cobwebs I need to dust off before I hang up some of my pictures on this wall, and that will fill in some of the void. It is my artwork. I will probably talk about it after I've put it up. Maybe that'll be the first video I do after today. We'll be talking about some of my art. It is twisted, it is disturbing, it is colorful, and hopefully it makes people think. I don't think I'm the best artist, but I express myself through art, and for a long time it was the only way that I could express my emotions before now finally finding my voice again. Sounds weird that I couldn't find words, because words is all I seem to have now. But yes, so I will be doing that probably by the next time I record. So with this, I will bid you adieu and sign off. So thank you for listening to this very long ramble. And ciao until next time.